The pain hit first, then the light. Danny Carter's eyes snapped open to a ceiling that curved wrong, made of something that shimmered like oil on water. His right hand felt warm, wrapped around something small and soft. She wasn't human. Her skin was pale blue, almost translucent, with darker blue patterns that moved beneath the surface like clouds. 3 fingers wrapped around his calloused hand. Her eyes were too large, golden with no pupils he could see. And when she noticed he was awake, she made a sound like wind chimes. "You held my hand," she said, in perfect English, though her mouth barely moved. Her voice had layers to it, like 3 people speaking at once. The whole time. Through the surgery. Through the recovery. 3 days. Danny tried to pull away, but his body wouldn't respond. Panic surged through him. The last thing he remembered was the attack on the mining station. The Vrex warships tearing through their defenses. The explosion that sent him flying through a bulkhead. "Where am I?" His voice came out as a croak. "Safe," she said. And that sound came again, musical and soft. She was giggling. "You're on the medical frigate Salvation. I'm Nurse Lyra. You're the only human survivor from Outpost Kelvin." The only survivor. Danny's chest tightened. 47 people worked that station. 47 miners, engineers, cooks, technicians. Gone. The others? Lyra's hand squeezed his gently. "I'm sorry. The Vrex don't leave survivors, but they didn't expect your distress signal to reach us so quickly. We drove them off before they could finish." Danny stared at their joined hands. Her skin felt like silk, warm despite its alien appearance. He should let go. This was protocol violation. On a dozen levels, humans and the Celestari had been allies for only 2 years, an alliance born from mutual enemies rather than mutual trust. Touching was considered intimate in their culture, reserved for family and mates, but she hadn't let go either. "Why did you hold back?" Lyra asked, tilting her head in a way that seemed curious. "When the Vrex breached your medical bay, you were already wounded. You could have hidden, but you activated the emergency beacon and drew their fire away from the civilian shelter. How do you know that?" "We recovered the security footage. You saved 6 people who were trapped in there. They made it to an escape pod because of you." Her golden eyes seemed to see right through him. Why did humans always choose to fight when retreat is wiser? "Because someone has to," Danny said. The words came out automatic. Something his father told him before he shipped out to the frontier. If everyone runs, there's nothing left worth running back to. Lyra made that chiming sound again, longer this time. "That's why we study your species with such fascination. The Celestari have forgotten how to be brave. We have strategies and technologies, but we've lost the will to stand, when standing means dying." She finally released his hand and Danny felt the absence immediately. She moved to a console beside his bed, her movements fluid and graceful. The medical bay around them was vast, filled with beds that held various species he didn't recognize. Some had too many limbs. Others glowed faintly in the dim lighting. "You need more rest," Lyra said, touching the console. "Your injuries were severe. Broken ribs, punctured lung, radiation burns, internal bleeding. By human standards, you should be dead. Then why aren't I?" She turned back to him, and for the first time, he saw something like pride in her alien features. "Because I wouldn't let you die. I've studied human physiology for years. You're my first real patient of your species. I wasn't going to fail." Danny managed a weak smile. "Thanks for that. Sleep now," Lyra said, adjusting something on the console. Warmth spread through Danny's body, pulling him back toward unconsciousness. "When you wake, we'll talk about what comes next. The war isn't over. The Vrex are pushing deeper into Allied territory, and humans have something they fear." "What's that?" Danny mumbled, already fading. Lyra's hand found his again, and she squeezed gently. "You never quit." Danny woke to alarms screaming through the ship. His body still ached, but the fog in his mind had lifted. The medical bay's lights had shifted to emergency red, and around him, alien patients were being moved by a team of nurses who moved with practiced efficiency. Lyra appeared at his bedside, her face tight with concern. "We need to move you. The Vrex found us. How many ships? 12. We have 6 defenders." She began disconnecting monitors from his chest. "This frigate isn't built for combat. We're running." Danny grabbed her wrist. "Get me to a weapons station. You can barely stand. Then get me a chair." He pulled himself up, ignoring the fire in his ribs. "I didn't survive an attack. Just to die running away." Lyra stared at him for a long moment. Then that musical sound came again. Not quite a giggle this time. Something else. Admiration, maybe. The captain will never allow it. Then don't tell him. Danny swung his legs off the bed. His vision swam, but he forced himself steady. "Your people need to learn how humans fight. Consider this a teaching moment." 1. She helped him stand, bearing more of his weight than he wanted to admit. They moved through corridors that curved and twisted in ways that made Danny's human brain hurt. Celestari architecture didn't follow straight lines. Everything flowed like water frozen in time. "There." Lyra pointed to a junction ahead. "Threeman." Lyra pointed to a junction ahead. Lyra pointed to a junction. "Auxiliary weapons control. It's automated, but can be manually operated." They reached the small room just as another impact shook the ship. Danny fell into the chair, his hands finding controls that felt wrong, spaced for fingers that weren't quite human proportions. The display showed him everything he needed. 12 Vrex destroyers in pursuit. Their angular black ships, cutting through space like knives. "Teach me the controls," Danny said. Lyra leaned over him, her hands guiding his to the right panels. "These target. These fire. But Danny, our weapons can't penetrate Vrex shielding. That's why we run. Your weapons are designed for precision." Danny studied the tactical display. The Vrex ships were in formation, their shields overlapping to create a nearly impenetrable wall. "Human weapons are designed to break things." He pulled up the ship's weapon inventory. The Celestari used plasma beams and particle weapons. Surgical strikes meant to disable rather than destroy. But there, buried in the auxiliary systems, he found something else. Mining charges. Explosive ordnance, meant for breaking asteroids. "How fast can this ship go?" Danny asked. "We're at maximum velocity now. Can we go faster? Even for a few seconds?" Lyra's eyes widened. "The engines would overheat. We'd lose propulsion." "Perfect." Danny's fingers flew across the controls, adapting to their strange layout through sheer necessity. "Tell your captain to cut engines on my mark. Vent all the mining charges out the aft bay, then hit full burn straight down." "That's insane. The charges won't detonate unless they hit something solid. They won't need to." Danny watched the Vrex ship's closing distance. When you panic stop a ship going this fast, everything behind you keeps going at the same speed. The Vrex will have maybe 2 seconds to react before they fly right into a cloud of explosives at relativistic velocity. Understanding dawned in Lyra's golden eyes. The impact will trigger the charges. And even if it doesn't, 12 ships trying to dodge the same debris field at full speed, they'll tear each other apart. Danny looked up at her. "Trust me." She hesitated for only a moment, then activated her communicator, speaking rapidly in her own language. The response came back, terse and sharp. "Captain Hayes says you have one chance," Lyra translated. "If this fails, we won't have the power to run. Then it better not fail." Danny's hand hovered over the release mechanism. The Vrex were 3,000 kilometers back. "Close enough. Tell him to cut engines now." The ship lurched as power died. Danny slammed the release, and every mining charge in the cargo bay shot out behind them like a spreading net. The Celestari frigate began its downward dive, perpendicular to their original course. Danny watched the tactical display. The Vrex maintained course, accelerating to catch their prey. 2,000 kilometers. 1,500. The lead Vrex destroyer hit the first charge at 0.6 light speed. The explosion was brilliant even on the tactical display. A white-hot ball of plasma that consumed the destroyer and triggered a chain reaction through the debris field. The other Vrex ships scattered, but space combat at these speeds left no room for error. 3 more destroyers collided, trying to evade. 2 more flew straight into the remaining charges. When the chaos cleared, 6 Vrex ships remained. But their formation was broken. Their shields dropped to maximize engine power for evasive maneuvers. "Now hit them with everything you've got," Danny said. Lyra was already moving, her hands dancing across her own console. The frigate's plasma batteries opened up. Precise strikes that punched through unshielded hulls. The Celestari ship shuddered with each shot, but the targeting was flawless. Within 30 seconds, 4 more Vrex destroyers were tumbling through space, venting atmosphere and fire. The last 2 Vrex ships broke off, fleeing back the way they'd come. The medical bay erupted in cheers, alien voices mixing in a dozen different languages. Danny slumped in his chair, adrenaline draining away and leaving only pain. Lyra caught him before he could fall. "That was the most reckless, dangerous, brilliant thing I've ever seen. You should see me when I'm actually healthy." Danny managed to grin. She helped him back toward medical. But the corridors were crowded now. Celestari crew members reached out to touch his shoulder as he passed, their way of showing respect. Some made sounds he didn't understand but felt the meaning of anyway. Captain Hayes himself was waiting in the medical bay. He was Celestari, taller than Lyra, with darker blue skin and patterns that looked like constellations. His eyes were silver instead of gold. "Mr. Carter," he said in English that carried only a slight accent, "I owe you an apology. When Nurse Lyra told me you wanted to help fight, I refused. I thought you were a liability, a wounded human who would only endanger himself and others. And now?" Danny asked. "Now I'm reconsidering everything I thought I knew about your species." Hayes looked at Lyra. "How many humans are available for military service?" "Billions," Danny said. "But most are stuck in the core systems. The Vrex control the jump gates leading to the frontier. Not anymore." Hayes pulled up a holographic display. It showed a map of local space, with Vrex-controlled sectors marked in red. 3 hours ago, the Alliance launched a coordinated counteroffensive. "We've retaken the Centauri Gate. Reinforcements are coming through. Human reinforcements." Danny stared at the map. "You're serious?" The Alliance Council debated for months whether to risk human troops in frontline combat. "Your people are physically fragile compared to most species. You have no natural defenses, no built-in weapons, no armor plating. By every logical measure, humans shouldn't be soldiers at all." Hayes met Danny's eyes. "But logic doesn't account for what you just did. What your species does when cornered." "We fight," Danny said simply. "You do more than fight. You think in ways we've forgotten." Hayes gestured to the display. "The Celestari are scientists and engineers. The Keth are traders. The Vorlax are diplomats. We've all specialized, optimized, become exactly what we need to be for peace. But the Vrex are warriors. Pure, dedicated, ruthless. And we're losing." Lyra helped Danny into a bed. His body was screaming now, the adrenaline fully gone. But his mind was sharp. "You want humans to teach you how to fight?" he said. "I want humans to fight with us," Hayes corrected. "The Alliance needs soldiers who understand that war isn't about efficiency or optimization. It's about will. About refusing to quit, even when every rational analysis says you should." "Humanity? Fuck yeah," Danny muttered. "What?" Lyra asked. "Something we say." Danny managed a tired smile. "It means we're too stupid to know when we're beaten." Hayes made a sound like grinding stones. Celestari laughter. Then perhaps stupidity is exactly what we need. Will you help us? Danny Carter, will you stay aboard this ship and teach my crew how humans think, how they fight? Danny looked at Lyra, who was watching him with those impossible golden eyes. She'd saved his life, held his hand through the worst of it, trusted him when he had nothing to offer but a crazy plan and desperation. Yeah, Danny said. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur. Danny's body healed faster than Lyra expected. Though she warned him repeatedly to slow down, he ignored her. There was too much to do. The Salvation wasn't just a medical frigate anymore. Captain Hayes had converted parts of it into a training facility. Human survivors from other attacks were being brought aboard. Miners, engineers, colonists, people who'd never held a weapon but learned fast when their lives depended on it. Danny trained them in the cargo bay that had once held mining charges. The space was huge, enough for 50 people to move through combat drills. Most of his students weren't soldiers. They were ordinary people who'd lost everything to the Vrex and wanted to hit back. Again, Danny called out as 2 men struggled through a hand-to-hand drill. Jake, keep your center low. The Vrex are taller than us but top-heavy. You want to get under their reach. Jake Mitchell was a mining foreman who'd lost his entire crew. He was 50 years old, stocky, and had hands like hammers. He drove low, just like Danny taught, and swept his partner's legs. Good. Now, in real combat, that's when you go for the joints. Vrex armor is strong, but it has gaps. Elbows, knees, neck. Hit hard, and move. Lisa Park raised her hand. She was young, barely 20, had been a botanical researcher before the war. What if we don't have weapons? Then you make them. Danny held up a piece of scrap metal, sharp and vicious. Anything can be a weapon, if you're desperate enough. The Vrex think we're weak because we're not built for combat. That's our advantage. They underestimate us. The training sessions attracted attention. Celestari crew members would stop to watch. Their faces unreadable. But Danny could feel their judgment. To them, this looked primitive, brutal, everything they'd evolved beyond. Lyra was different. She attended every session, taking notes on a device that translated her observations into glowing symbols. When Danny called a break, she approached him. The crew thinks you're teaching violence, she said quietly. I am. They think it's beneath us, that we should fight with technology and strategy, not fists and improvised weapons. Danny wiped sweat from his face. Technology and strategy are fine when you have time to use them. But sometimes, the Vrex breach your ship, and you're face to face with something that wants to kill you. What matters then? Survival, Lyra said. Exactly. Danny looked at his students. They were tired, bruised, but their eyes were different now. Harder, focused. Your people forgot how to be uncomfortable. You optimized everything for efficiency and comfort. But war is neither of those things. Is that why humans are so good at it? Because you embrace discomfort? We don't embrace it. We just refuse to let it stop us. Danny grabbed a water container. The design awkward for human hands. Every species in the Alliance is better than us at something. You're smarter. The Keth are stronger. The Vorlax are faster. But none of you are more stubborn. Lyra made that chiming sound again. Danny had learned to distinguish her different laughs. This one was thoughtful. The captain wants to see you, she said. In his ready room. He said it's important. Danny followed her through the ship's winding corridors. He'd learned to navigate the Celestari design now. He could even appreciate the beauty of it. Everything curved and flowed like frozen water. It was peaceful. Serene. Nothing like a human warship. Captain Hayes's ready room was circular, the walls covered in displays showing star charts and tactical information. The captain stood before the largest display, his hands clasped behind his back. Mr. Carter, he said without turning. How many humans do you think could fight if we gave them the chance. Danny considered the question carefully. Everyone who's lost someone to the Vrex. Everyone who's seen what they do to colonies. Everyone who's tired of running. Millions. At least. And how many of those millions would be effective soldiers? All of them, given time. Humans learn fast when we're motivated. And we're very motivated. Rementime. Hayes finally turned to face him. The Alliance Council has approved a proposal. We're forming mixed-species combat units. Human tactics combined with Celestari technology and support from other Alliance members. You would lead the first unit. Danny's heart kicked up. I'm not a soldier. Not a real one. I was a mining engineer. You're a survivor who thinks like a warrior. That's more valuable than years of peacetime military training. Hayes pulled up a new display. It showed a ship, massive and angular, clearly human in design. The Earth Defense Force is sending its first detachment through the Centauri Gate. 3,000 soldiers and their equipment. They'll arrive in 4 days. I want you to brief them on what you've learned fighting the Vrex. They won't take orders from a civilian. Then, it's fortunate the Alliance is commissioning you as a tactical advisor. The rank doesn't matter. What matters is that you understand something about the Vrex that our military analysts are still struggling to accept. What's that? That they're not invincible. They're just committed. Hayes met Danny's eyes. The Vrex expanded their empire through absolute dedication to conquest. They never retreat, never surrender, never stop. For centuries, that was enough to break any opposition. But now, they've met a species that's just as stubborn. Danny thought about Outpost Kelvin, about the people who died there, about drawing fire away from the civilian shelter, even though it meant certain death. Humans don't kit, he said. No, you don't. And that terrifies the Vrex more than any weapon we could build. Hayes gestured to the star chart. They're pulling back from 3 sectors. Regrouping. Regrouping. In 50 years of war against the Alliance, they've never done that before. Your species has been in this fight for less than a year, and already, the enemy is changing tactics. Good, Danny said. Let them be scared. Over the next 4 days, Danny barely slept. He worked with Captain Hayes' tactical team, analyzing every Vrex engagement on record. Patterns emerged. The Vrex were predictable in their unpredictability. They valued honor and direct confrontation. They saw retreat as weakness. They never expected enemies to sacrifice themselves for tactical advantage. All things humans did instinctively. Lyra stayed close, helping him translate Celestari military doctrine into terms he could understand. Late one night, in the observation deck overlooking the vast emptiness of space, she asked him something that had clearly been troubling her. Do you miss Earth? Danny looked out at the stars. I've never been there. I was born on a colony world, grew up in space stations and mining outposts. Earth is just a story to me. Come intactor, but humanity comes from there. Don't you want to see where your species began? Someday, maybe. Danny glanced at her. Why do you ask? Because Celestari are bound to our homeworld. We travel, we build stations and colonies, but we always return home. It's who we are, but humans scatter across the stars like seeds and never look back. I don't understand how you can be so untethered. Maybe that's our strength, Danny said. We're not defending a place. We're defending an idea. The idea that we have a right to exist, to spread out and build and explore. The Vrex can't take that from us because it's not something you can conquer. Lyra was quiet for a long time. Then she reached out and took his hand, just like she had that first day. I'm glad you survived, Danny Carter. Me too. The Earth Defense Force arrived exactly on schedule. Their ships came through the jump gate in tight formation. Human military precision on full display. Danny watched from the Salvation's observation deck as the fleet maneuvered into position. Impressive, Captain Hayes said beside him. Your people learn quickly. We've been watching you fight for 2 years, Danny said. Studying, adapting. That's what humans do. We copy what works and make it our own. The lead ship, the Defiant, was pure human engineering. Angular, where Celestari ships curved. Armored, where they were elegant. It looked like a fist, ready to strike. Danny was summoned to meet with the human commanders. The shuttle ride over felt surreal. Surrounded by Celestari crew, he'd almost forgotten what it was like to be around his own kind. The Defiant's interior was all straight lines and harsh lighting. No flowing corridors or artistic touches. Just efficient, practical design. It felt like home. Commander Lisa Brooks met him in the briefing room. She was career military, her uniform crisp, her eyes sharp. 3 other officers flanked her, all watching Danny with expressions that ranged from curious to skeptical. "Mr. Carter," Brooks said, not bothering with pleasantries. "You've been living among the Celestari for almost a month now. Tell me what you've learned." Danny spent 2 hours walking them through everything. Vrex tactics, Celestari technology, the strengths and weaknesses of Alliance military doctrine. The officers listened, asked hard questions, challenged his assumptions. Finally, Brooks leaned back in her chair. "You're saying the Alliance has better tech and more ships, but they're losing because they fight like this is a peacetime exercise. They fight like scientists trying to solve a problem." Danny corrected. "The Vrex fight like they have nothing to lose. The only time we've won is when we matched their commitment. Then we need to show them what human commitment looks like." Brooks pulled up a tactical display. "The Vrex are massing forces in the Sigma sector. 15 battle groups. They're preparing for a major offensive that will cut the Alliance in half. Command wants us to hit them first." "That's suicide," Danny said. 15 battle groups? Even with Earth's entire fleet, we'd be outnumbered 3-1, which is exactly why they won't expect it." Brooks smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. The Celestari would never attempt such an attack. Too risky. Too many variables. But humans? We specialize in bad odds. Danny felt something ignite in his chest. Not fear, anticipation. "Be our liaison with the Alliance fleet. Coordinate our tactics with theirs. And when the shooting starts, show them that humans don't just fight to survive. We fight to win." The battle plan came together over the next week. The Alliance committed 6 fleets to the operation. The Earth Defense Force would make up a 7th. Together, they'd jump into the Sigma sector and hit the Vrex before they could launch their offensive. It was exactly the kind of reckless, aggressive strategy that made Celestari admirals nervous. But Captain Hayes supported it. More importantly, he convinced the other Alliance commanders to support it. "Your people are insane," he told Danny the night before the operation. "But perhaps that's what we need. The Vrex have trained us to be cautious, defensive, reactive. You're teaching us to attack." "Not just attack," Danny said. "Attack when they think they're safe. Hit them where it hurts. Make them afraid." Lyra found him in the cargo bay, where his training group was preparing for their role in the battle. They'd be boarding parties, hitting damaged Vrex ships, and securing them before they could self-destruct. "This is dangerous," she said quietly. "Everything about this war is dangerous. But you don't have to be on the front line. You've done enough." Danny looked at his students. Jake Mitchell was checking his armor, his weathered face calm. Lisa Park was reviewing breach protocols with 2 other colonists. They'd all lost people. They all had reasons to fight. "If I ask them to risk everything, I need to be there with them," Danny said. Lyra's hand found his. She didn't giggle this time. Her golden eyes were serious. "Then come back. That's an order from your nurse." "Yes, ma'am." The fleet jumped at 0600 hours. Danny felt the strange wrench of FTL travel, reality bending around the ship as they crossed light years in seconds. When they emerged in the Sigma sector, alarms immediately started screaming. "Vrex contacts," the tactical officer called out. 17 battle groups. Not 15. They reinforced. Doesn't matter. Commander Brooks' voice came over the fleet channel. All ships, attack pattern Delta. Hit them fast and keep moving. Don't give them time to form up. The Alliance fleet surged forward. Celestari cruisers unleashed precise plasma fire. Keth destroyers launched missile barrages. Vorlax frigates danced between the larger ships, providing cover. And the human ships dove straight into the heart of the Vrex formation, like hammers. Danny watched from the Salvation's auxiliary control room. The Earth Defense Force fought with a brutality that shocked the Alliance crews. They didn't try to disable enemy ships. They obliterated them. Railguns punched through shields. Nuclear missiles turned battleships into expanding clouds of debris. They're not fighting to win, Captain Hayes said quietly. They're fighting to destroy. That's how you beat the Vrex, Danny said. You make them realize that continuing the fight costs more than retreating. The battle raged for 3 hours. The Vrex fought with their usual ferocity, but something was different. They were hesitating. When human ships pressed forward, despite catastrophic damage, the Vrex pulled back. When boarding parties tore through their vessels, they abandoned ship, rather than fight to the last. Danny felt it the moment the battle turned. The Vrex weren't retreating tactically. They were fleeing. All boarding parties. Launch now, he ordered. His team of 40 colonists and miners strapped into assault shuttles. The ride over to the nearest damaged Vrex destroyer was rough. Enemy point defense shredding 2 shuttles before they reached the hull. Danny's shuttle crunched against alien metal. The cutting torch burned through in seconds. Then they were inside, moving through corridors designed for creatures 7 feet tall with 4 arms. Stay in pairs, Danny ordered. Watch your corners. Remember your training. They moved through the ship like water through cracks, fast and unpredictable. The Vrex they encountered fought hard, but seemed almost surprised to face humans. They expected Celestari tactics, careful and measured. Instead, they got miners with plasma cutters and colonists with improvised explosives. Danny's team reached the bridge in 15 minutes. The Vrex captain stood in the center, surrounded by dead crew members. He was massive, his armor black and scarred, his 4 arms holding weapons that could tear humans apart. You should not be here, the captain said in broken English. Humans are weak, fragile. You do not belong in war. And yet, here we are, Danny said, his rifle aimed center mass. Surrender your ship. The Vrex do not surrender. Then you die here. Danny didn't blink. Your choice. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the Vrex captain lowered his weapons. You are not like the others, he said. You fight as we do. With everything you have. Damn right we do. They secured the ship and held it until Alliance crews could take over. By the time Danny's team returned to the Salvation, the battle was over. 17 Vrex battle groups had been reduced to scattered remnants fleeing into deep space. The Alliance had won. But more importantly, the Vrex had lost. Lyra was waiting in the docking bay, her face tight with worry that melted into relief when she saw him. She didn't say anything, just took his hand and held on tight. I told you I'd come back, Danny said. You're bleeding, just a little. He looked at his team. They were exhausted, injured, but alive. All of them. We did it. We did it. You did more than that. Captain Hayes appeared, his silver eyes bright with something that might have been pride. The Vrex are calling for a ceasefire. They want to negotiate. Danny stared at him. Negotiate? The Vrex don't negotiate. They conquer or die trying. Apparently, they've decided that trying to conquer humanity costs too much. Hayes pulled up a communication. It showed a Vrex command ship, heavily damaged, broadcasting on open channels. They're offering terms: territory exchange, prisoner release, formal peace treaty. The Alliance Council is in emergency session now. But the consensus is that we've won. We haven't won, Danny said. We've just shown them we can't be beaten. That's not the same thing. We haven't won. For now, it's enough. Hayes looked at Danny's team, at the battered colonists and miners who'd become soldiers. Your people changed this war. Mr. Carter, in less than a month, you took an alliance that was slowly losing and turned it into a force the Vrex fear. That's remarkable. We just did what humans do, Danny said. We refused to quit. The days after the battle were strange. The ceasefire held. Vrex ships withdrew from contested sectors. Alliance fleets moved to reclaim lost territory. Diplomats from a dozen species argued terms and conditions. But for Danny and his team, the war felt distant now. They were in the medical bay, recovering from injuries, telling stories, trying to process what they'd survived. Jake Mitchell had lost an arm in the boarding action. He sat in his bed, looking at the advanced prosthetic the Celestari doctors were building for him. Never thought I'd end up a cyborg, he said, with a dry laugh. Could be worse, Lisa Park said from across the room. She'd taken shrapnel to her leg but would walk again. Could be dead, Jake agreed. Instead, we're heroes. The humans who taught the Alliance how to fight. Strange how life works. Danny sat with them. His own wounds bandaged and healing faster than expected. Lyra had worked some kind of medical magic, accelerating his recovery with treatments that bordered on miraculous. She found him there, in the common area of the medical bay, surrounded by his people. Can I borrow you? She asked. They walked to the observation deck, the same place they'd talked before. The view was different now. Instead of empty space, they could see the Alliance fleet in formation, victorious and proud. The Celestari Council wants to honor you, Lyra said. You and your team. They're creating a new military division, mixed species combat units, just like Captain Hayes proposed. They want you to lead it. I'm not a soldier, Danny said again. You keep saying that. But everyone who's fought beside you disagrees. She turned to face him fully. The war isn't over, Danny. The ceasefire is temporary. The Vrex will regroup, rethink their strategy. When they come back, we'll need people who understand how to fight them. And you think that's me? I know it is. Lyra took both his hands now, her three-fingered grip warm and sure. But more than that, I want it to be you. Because I want you to stay. Danny felt his heart kick. Lyra, I know it's complicated. I know humans and Celestari don't usually form bonds like this. But you held my hand, Danny Carter. For 3 days while you were unconscious, you held my hand. And when you woke up, you didn't let go until I did. That means something. It means I was scared, Danny said quietly. It means I was in pain, and you were the only good thing in a universe that had tried to kill me. Is that all it means? Danny looked at their joined hands. Her skin was still strange to him, still alien. But it was also familiar now. Comforting. Safe. No, he admitted. It means I care about you. More than I probably should. That musical sound again, but softer now. Tender. Then stay. Lead this new division. Fight with us. And let me figure out what this means. These feelings between humans and Celestari. I don't have anywhere else to go, Danny said. Outpost Kelvin is gone. My old life is gone. All I have left is this. Then build a new life. Here, with me, with all of us. Lyra squeezed his hands. The Alliance needs humans, Danny. Not just your tactics or your stubbornness. They need your hope. Your refusal to give up. They need to remember what it's like to fight for something, instead of just trying not to lose. Danny thought about his team. About Jake and Lisa and the others who'd trusted him. About the Earth Defense Force and their brutal efficiency. About Captain Hayes and his willingness to try new things. About Lyra, who'd saved his life and then held his hand through the darkness. Okay, he said. I'll stay. 3 months later, the Combined Tactical Response Division held its first full muster. 500 soldiers, from a dozen species, all trained in human combat doctrine. They stood in formation aboard the Salvation, which had been converted from a medical frigate into a mobile command base. Danny walked the line, inspecting troops that looked nothing like traditional Alliance military. There were Celestari who'd learned hand-to-hand combat, Keth who practiced guerrilla tactics, Vorlax who'd mastered human weapons, and humans. Lots of humans. Not just the miners and colonists from his original team, but Earth Defense Force veterans who'd volunteered for this experimental unit. Commander Brooks stood beside him. She'd been promoted to lead the human contingent, while Danny served as overall tactical commander. They look good, she said. They look terrified, Danny corrected. But that's fine. Fear keeps you sharp. The Vrex ceasefire ends in 2 weeks. Intelligence says they're moving forces into position for another push. Multiple fronts this time. They learned from the Sigma sector. Multiple fronts. I'm an 8. Multiple fronts. Multiple fronts. Good. So did we. Danny looked at his division. Have you briefed them on the plan? They know their roles. The question is whether they can execute under pressure. They will, because they have to. Danny raised his voice. Division, attention. 500 soldiers snapped to readiness. Alien and human, all moving as one. In 2 weeks, we go back to war. Danny said. The Vrex think the Sigma sector was luck. They think humans got a lucky shot and scared them off. They're wrong. What happened in Sigma was just the beginning. He walked along the line, meeting eyes both human and alien. The Alliance has spent 50 years fighting defensively, playing not to lose, trying to minimize casualties and preserve resources. That's smart. That's logical. That's also why the Vrex kept winning. Danny stopped in the center of the formation. We're going to do something different. We're going to attack. Every time. Everywhere. We're going to hit them so hard and so often that they can't plan, can't regroup, can't catch their breath. We're going to make them realize that fighting the Alliance isn't about conquest anymore. It's about survival. The soldiers stood silent, absorbing his words. This won't be easy. We'll take casualties. We'll fail sometimes. But we will never quit. Because that's what humans taught the Alliance. That's what you're going to teach the Vrex. He looked at each section of the formation. We're not fighting to win. We're fighting to make sure the enemy loses. And we'll keep fighting until they understand that the only way this ends is if they go home. Division, Commander Brooks called. Prepare for deployment. They dispersed to their ships, the formation breaking into organized chaos. Danny watched them go, feeling the weight of command settling onto his shoulders. Lyra appeared beside him, her medical bag slung over her shoulder. She'd insisted on staying with the division, serving as chief medical officer. That was a good speech, she said. I hope it was enough. It will be. Because you believe it. And they believe you. She took his hand. That gesture that had become natural between them. Whatever happens out there, we face it together. Danny looked at the fleet assembling around them. Human ships and Alliance vessels, working in concert for the first time. Together, he agreed. The war wasn't over. The Vrex would come back, stronger and more determined. But so would the Alliance. And at the heart of it all, teaching everyone that some species just don't know when to quit, were the humans. Stubborn, fragile, impossible humans. The Combined Tactical Response Division deployed 6 days early. Intelligence reports showed Vrex movements in 3 sectors, clearly preparing for coordinated strikes. Danny made the call to hit them during their staging phase, before they could launch. It was exactly the kind of aggressive tactic the old Alliance command would never approve. But Captain Hayes had been promoted to Admiral, and he'd learned to trust human instincts. "You're sure about this?" Hayes asked during the final briefing. "No," Danny admitted. "But waiting for them to be ready is worse. We attack now. We catch them off balance. And if we're wrong, if this is a feint, and the real attack comes somewhere else, then we adapt. That's what humans do best." The division split into 3 task forces, each headed for a different sector. Danny led the central force himself, aboard the Salvation with Lyra and a mixed crew that had learned to work together despite their differences. The jump into the target sector was clean. They emerged in the middle of a Vrex staging area, surrounded by supply ships and troop carriers. Exactly as intelligence predicted. "All ships, weapons free," Danny ordered. "Target the carriers first. Don't let them launch ground forces." The battle was brutal and fast. Human railguns tore through Vrex shields, while Celestari plasma weapons exploited the gaps. Keth missiles tracked fleeing ships. Vorlax fighters harassed the larger vessels, preventing them from forming defensive formations. The Vrex fought back hard, but they were caught unprepared. Their warships were in dock for maintenance. Their troops were aboard transports, not ready for combat. Within an hour, the staging area was in ruins. "Minimal Alliance casualties," Commander Brooks reported. "Vrex losses are catastrophic. They're broadcasting retreat orders." "Pursue," Danny said. "Don't let them regroup." "Sir, that's beyond our mission parameters." "Mission parameters just changed. We're not here to win a battle. We're here to break their will to fight." The pursuit lasted 3 days. The Alliance task forces chased the Vrex across 2 systems, hitting them every time they tried to stop. It wasn't about destroying every ship. It was about making them understand that there was no safe harbor, no place to rest. Finally, the Vrex stopped running and turned to fight. Their commander, a veteran named Vorkesh, broadcast a message on all channels. "Human commander," Vorkesh said in perfect English. "You fight without honor. You attack the weak. You pursue the wounded. This is not war. This is slaughter." Danny considered his response carefully, then opened a channel. "Honor is for species that can afford it. We can't. Every day this war continues. Humans die. Alliance citizens die. So we fight the only way that works. We make it cost too much to keep fighting. You are savages. Maybe. But we're savages who win." Danny cut the channel and turned to his tactical officer. "All ships, prepare for final assault. This ends now." The last battle was the hardest. The Vrex fought with desperate fury. Knowing this was their chance to prove humans weren't invincible, they threw everything at the Alliance task force. And for a while, it looked like they might actually break through. Then Jake Mitchell's boarding team hit the Vrex flagship. They fought through deck after deck, taking casualties but never stopping. When they reached the bridge, Jake faced Vorkesh directly. The fight lasted seconds. Jake had one arm, a prosthetic that was still new and unfamiliar. Vorkesh had 4, all enhanced by cybernetics and combat drugs. But Jake had something Vorkesh didn't understand. He had nothing left to lose. Jake took the Vrex commander down with a combat knife and sheer determination. When it was over, the remaining Vrex ships fled. Not retreated. Fled. The Alliance had won again. Danny found Jake in the medical bay afterward. The miner-turned-soldier was covered in wounds, his prosthetic arm damaged beyond repair. But he was grinning. "Did we get him?" Jake asked. "We got him," Danny confirmed. "Good, because I'm retiring after this. I'm too old for this shit." Danny laughed, the sound surprising him. "You earned it." Over the next week, reports came in from the other task forces. All 3 attacks had succeeded. The Vrex staging areas were destroyed, their offensive plans in shambles. More importantly, their military leadership was divided. Some wanted to regroup and try again. Others wanted to negotiate a permanent peace. The Alliance Council is meeting tomorrow. Admiral Hayes told Danny. They're going to discuss peace terms. Real ones, not just a ceasefire. The Vreks are ready to end this. Because we scared them, Danny said. Because you showed them that humans will never stop. No matter how long it takes, no matter what it costs. That kind of commitment is terrifying to a species that thought they were the most dedicated warriors in the galaxy. Danny looked out at the fleet. They'd lost ships, lost people. The casualty lists were long, but they'd also proven something important. What happens to the division? He asked. That's up to you. The Council wants to make it permanent. A rapid response force that can deploy anywhere in Alliance space. But they'll only do it if you agree to lead it. Tense case. Tense case. And if I say no, then we go back to the old ways. Slow, cautious, reactive. Hayes met Danny's eyes. But I don't think you'll say no. Combacted. Donner Orgid. Win Donner. Bring sein. Donner. Donner Orgid. Win Donner. Donner Orgid. Donner. Orgid. He was right. Danny wouldn't. Because somewhere between waking up on a medical frigate and leading a military division, he'd found a new purpose. A new home. Lyra found him in his quarters that night, reviewing casualty reports. She took the datapad from his hands and set it aside. You can't save everyone, she said gently. I know, but I have to try. That's very human of you. She sat beside him on the bunk, her presence warm and comforting. The Council approved the division. 500 soldiers, 15 ships, operating authority across all Alliance space. They even gave it a proper name. 5N5. What name? Task Force Defiant. Lyra smiled at his expression. They thought it was fitting. 4. Lyra Splast. Lyra. Lyra Splast. Lyra Splast. It is. Danny leaned back, exhaustion catching up with him. I don't know if I can do this, Lyra. Leading soldiers, making decisions that get people killed. You've been doing it for months. That was survival. This is different. This is choosing to fight. And what would you choose instead? Going back to mining? Pretending the war isn't happening? She took his hand. You're good at this, Danny. Not because you're a natural leader or a brilliant tactician. Because you care about the people under your command. They know you'll never ask them to do something you wouldn't do yourself. Nodder. They deserve better than me. They deserve exactly you. Stubborn, brave, unwilling to quit. Her golden eyes caught the dim light. Stay with me. Stay with all of us. Keep fighting until this war is really over. Danny thought about Outpost Kelvin. About the 47 people who died there. About the choice to draw fire. To stand and fight when running was smarter. Okay, he said. The peace negotiations took 6 months. The Vreks delegation was stiff and formal, clearly uncomfortable with the concept of surrender. They weren't used to losing, but they also couldn't deny the reality. Human tactics had changed the war. The Alliance wasn't just defending anymore. They were attacking. And the Vreks had no answer for an enemy that refused to quit. The treaty was signed aboard a neutral station, with representatives from every Alliance species present. The Vreks agreed to return all occupied territory. They agreed to reparations. They agreed to formal diplomatic relations. In exchange, the Alliance agreed not to pursue Vreks forces into their home systems. They agreed to establish neutral zones. They agreed to treat captured Vreks soldiers humanely. It wasn't perfect. Both sides had to compromise. Danny attended the signing ceremony in his formal uniform, still uncomfortable with the rank insignia and decorations. Admiral Hayes stood beside him, along with representatives from the Celestari Council. This is your victory, Hayes said quietly. Humanity earned this peace. We all did, Danny corrected. Every species. Every soldier. We just showed everyone It was possible. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Aliens from a dozen worlds mixing together, celebrating the end of hostilities. Danny moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, answering questions about human military doctrine. He found the Vrex delegation standing apart, isolated by their own pride and the Alliance's lingering distrust. Danny approached them, ignoring the shocked looks from nearby dignitaries. "Commander Vorkesh," Danny said to the Vrex he'd fought against, "you survived. The Celestari medical technology is impressive," Vorkesh replied stiffly, "though I would have preferred an honorable death. Good thing you don't always get what you prefer." Danny held out his hand, a human gesture that meant nothing to the Vrex. "We don't have to be friends, but we don't have to be enemies either." Vorkesh stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out with one of his forearms and clasped it. "Your species is strange, human. You fight like demons but seek peace like fools. We're complicated," Danny admitted. "But we're done killing each other. That's what matters." He left the Vrex delegation and found Lyra waiting near the viewport. She dressed formally too, her blue skin adorned with luminescent patterns that marked important occasions in Celestari culture. "You made quite an impression," she said. "Half the delegates think you're mad for approaching the Vrex. Probably am. But someone had to break the ice." They stood together, watching the stars through the viewport. Somewhere out there, human colony ships were already heading to reclaim lost worlds. Vrex fleets were returning home. The Alliance was rebuilding. "What now?" Lyra asked. "Now we make sure this peace lasts." Danny looked at her. Task Force Defiant isn't going away. There are still threats out there. Pirates. Rogue factions. Danny, species that might see the Alliance as weak after years of war. We'll be ready. Always fighting, always ready to fight. There's a difference. He took her hand. That familiar gesture that still felt both strange and right. "But maybe there's time for other things too." "Like what?" "Like figuring out what this is between us. Like learning about your people's culture. Like maybe visiting Earth someday, seeing where humanity came from. Like living, instead of just surviving." Lyra made that chiming sound. The one he'd learned was joy. "I'd like that." They stood there together, human and alien, watching the peace they'd fought so hard to win. The war had changed both of them. Changed the Alliance. Changed the galaxy. But some things never changed. Like the stubborn refusal to quit. Like the choice to stand when standing was hard. Like the willingness to hold someone's hand through the darkness. Outside the station, stars burned eternal. And among them, humanity had found its place. Not as conquerors or victims, but as equals, as allies, as people who'd shown the galaxy what it meant to never give up. Danny Carter had woken up on a medical frigate with an alien nurse at his side, holding his hand. He'd been scared and wounded and alone, but he'd held on anyway, and that had made all the difference.